In 2020, there were several cases as a result of the pandemic and other factors that captivated the nation. One, of course, was George Floyd. Two, Kyle Rittenhouse. And, of course, Ahmad Arbery. Ahmad Arbery's trial is going on right now at the same time as Kyle Rittenhouse's in Atlanta, whereas Rittenhouse is in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So, two fates, or the fates of the three men accused of murdering him, hang in the balance. I have not been covering the Ahmad Arbery trial as I have been devoting all my coverage to the Rittenhouse trial. There are several really great true crime and law channels that are covering the Ahmad Arbery. My favorite would be Nate the Lawyer. Definitely go check him out. He is covering it day by day, giving daily summaries of it, just like I'm doing for the Rittenhouse trial. But what I am re-releasing and recutting is my original coverage of the Ahmad Arbery case in 2020. The facts as we knew them at that time. At the time I did this video, the third gentleman, the neighbor, had not yet been implicated as a co-conspirator, but he is now, and he is facing trial with the other two in Atlanta this week. It should be wrapping up in about another week. I don't think it's going to take more than 3 weeks to wrap this up, and whatever the sentence is, I want the truth to come out. Unlike the Rittenhouse case, I think this is the one case that might have a lot more criminal element to it than the Rittenhouse case as far as the defendants. But I reserve judgment. I'm going to go back and start watching some of the trial to get caught up on what's being presented. And so I'm right along with you on this, but I think it's time for my re-release of the original video that I did. And so bear in mind that not all the facts were in at the time I did this video, and not all the facts are in as of yet because the trial is going on. With that being said, 2020, giving you Ahmad Arbery.
Keto and crime, keto and crime. We uncover the grime on keto and crime. Keto and crime, keto and crime. Now is the time for keto and crime.
Hey everybody, welcome to Keto and Crime and Thought Crime. Today we're going to look into a case that I have hesitated doing anything about, simply because of the stigma around it and everything that's going on with the case right now, Ahmad Arbery in Atlanta, Georgia. My heart is breaking. It goes out to everyone involved. I was raised to, yes, see color because it's there, and none of us can anybody that claims they don't see it is lying. I'm just going to say that. But we can see it, we can understand it, and we can respect our differences, but also know that we are all Americans. So I was raised to respect everyone, and I respect everyone. If you are nice to me and respectful of me, I'm going to give the same to you. I love everybody. I don't care what they look like, as long as you are decent and respectful to me. Not everyone's like that, and that's a sad thing, but I believe there are more good people in this country than bad people, and I just want, if you're listening to this, want to know that we will get through this. As a country, as a nation, we will get through this, and the wrongs will be righted. I truly have that faith. I'm not a religious person, but I have faith in this country that those wrongs will be righted. So if you're watching this, whether you're my subscriber or not, know that I love you and I want nothing but peace and harmony and good things for everyone in this country. And that's all I can say. I, as I said, hesitated to do this case, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. The case of Ahmad Arbery. But I am going to do this from a very objective place. I'm going to insert zero politics in this. I'm going to do my best not to insert any of my own opinions in this. I'm going to give you the facts as we know them and leave you to draw your own conclusions, because that's what's going to help us now in this time of tragedy, is the truth and nothing but the truth. So let's get into it. The case of Ahmad Arbery. I'm going to break it down into 4 different parts. Part 1, I'm going to go over the laws that I hear cited most often in reference to the case. That is Georgia's citizen's arrest law, the stand your ground laws, and Georgia's statutes on criminal trespass. I'm going to go over each and every one of those laws in Part 1, telling you actually what the law states. I've also spoken to a couple of friends of mine that are attorneys. They didn't want to actually be on the video or in the podcast, but I've also spoken to one of them practices in California, one practices in Georgia, and they've both given me an education on what these statutes, on what an interpretation of these statutes would most likely be from a judge. Part 2, I'm going to talk about the reported crimes and crime records that was reported in the Satilla area of southeast Georgia just prior to. I am also going to talk about the past reports of the local police department. In Part 3, we're going to go over the actual events on the day that Mr. Arbery died, and then Part 4 will be the investigation and where we are today. So without further ado, let's get into it. And remember, please, I invite you to come here and comment. Leave your opinions below, but please do it in a respectful manner. I have one rule for my comment section. Speak to each other like we're humans. Please don't scream. Please don't use any kind of racial slur or anything like that, because if you do, I'm going to delete your comment. I'm going to block you. That doesn't go on my channel. Please, if you have a question or you have something to say it in a humane, professional manner, and I'll be happy to respond. I try to respond to most of my comments. My email, you can also find it on my channel if you'd like to email me and ask me a question off the record. I want to say I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a legal professional. I'm just a woman that is fascinated by true crime and loves the investigation of it. So that's all I am. I believe in education and telling the facts and the truth as much as possible. Also, got to throw this in there, as my channel is heavily demonetized just because of the type of stuff I do. If you want to support the channel, I have a Patreon, I have a PayPal, I have a Cash App. All those links are down below if you want to support the channel. Always appreciated, never required. But let's get into it. The case of Ahmad Arbery. Part 1, the laws. Hey everyone, now let's dive into the laws that are often quoted in the Ahmad Arbery case. First is the Georgia Citizen's Arrest Law. This is Title 17 of the Georgia Code of Criminal Procedures. It's from Chapter 4, the Arrest of Persons, Article 4, Arrest by Private Persons. So this is Georgia Civil Code and Legal Code 17460, Grounds for Arrest. This is a very short law. All of my sources come from Westlaw, westlaw.com, westlaw.org. You can find the definition and terms of any law that you want to find in Westlaw. You just type in the state and the law you're searching for, you will be able to find it. It's definitely a great resource. But basically, this law simply states, a private person may arrest an offender if the offense is committed in his presence or within his immediate knowledge. If the offense is a felony and the offender is escaping or attempting to escape, a private person may arrest him upon reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. So it can be either a felony or a misdemeanor, and they have to see them commit the crime either in their presence or within their immediate knowledge, such as seeing them across the street or something, and they must also be attempting to escape. That is the Georgia Citizen's Arrest Law. The Georgia Stand Your Ground Law, Georgia Code Section 16321, use of force, in the reasoning that you need to stand your ground or defend yourself. Let's look at it. Justifiable use of force. You can use force when you reasonably believe that the force is necessary in order to protect yourself or a third party against another person's imminent use of unlawful force. So force for force. The scope of the force that you can use depends on whether you reasonably believe the type of force is necessary to defend yourself or a third party, such as if they are swinging at you, you can swing at them. If they use a weapon, you may use a weapon. You may use deadly force only if you reasonably believe that such force is necessary to prevent death or great bodily harm to you or to another, or to prevent the commission of a forcible felony. So you can use deadly force if you think they're going to enact deadly force upon you or another, or onto another party beyond that. When the use of deadly force is not justified. If you're the initial aggressor, that is, you're the one that starts it, you're the one that brings the weapon you're one that brings the gun to a fist fight sort of thing. If you're attempting to commit, or leave after you have attempted a felony, stand your ground. It's only relevant when it deals with felonies. And related defense, use of force in defense of a property other than a habitation. All right. This is where it gets a little tricky. We're going to go over that. Usually this law is in relation to your own habitation. There are some exclusions to that. Let's look at it. When does stand your ground relate to another person's property? Is this property lawfully in your possession or their possession and you have the right to defend it? Lawfully in the possession of a member of his immediate family, such as your wife, your mother, your father, belonging to a person whose property you have the legal duty to protect. And I think that right there, belonging to a person whose property he has the legal duty to protect, is probably the most telling about this, because we were talking about earlier, because if Greg McMichael felt he was officially deputized to protect this property, he may have thought that this actually applies to him. But still, this has nothing to do with being able to detain or arrest someone. It's more being able to protect the property if he had to. But we also don't know if Mr. English, who actually owned the property, ever contacted Mr. McMichael. There hasn't been any indication, so therefore he wouldn't have been legally bound to protect that property. And finally, the last part of this, the use of force which is intended or likely to cause death or create bodily harm to prevent trespass on or other torturous or criminal interference with real property other than a habitation or personal property is not justified, so it has to be your personal habitat, unless the person using such force reasonably believes that it is necessary to prevent the commission of a forcible felony. So you can only use deadly force to protect another person's property if you believe that a forcible felony was going to be committed upon that property, which obviously wasn't the case in the Ahmad Arbery case. He had already left the property. And finally, criminal trespass in the state of Georgia. This is Title 16, Chapter 7, Article 2. Dealing with general provisions of criminal trespass. This will tell us whether or not Ahmad Arbery was actually guilty of a crime, which would have a huge pending on whether or not stand your ground or citizen's arrest would apply. A person commits the offense of criminal trespass when he or she intentionally damages any property of another without consent, or that other person and the damage thereto is $500 or less, knowingly and maliciously interferes with the possession or the use of property of another person without the consent of that property. So you have to knowingly or willingly be intent upon damaging another person's property for it to be considered criminal trespass. B. A person commits the offense of criminal trespass when he or she knowingly and without authority enters upon the land or premises of another person into any part of a vehicle, railroad car, aircraft, or watercraft of another person for an unlawful purpose. So if you enter their property with the intent of doing something unlawful, therefore with all the different people going in and out of that house, I don't think that applied. enters upon the land or premise of another person or into any part of any vehicle, railroad car, aircraft, watercraft, of another person after receiving prior to such entry notice from the owner, rightful occupant, or upon proper identification, authorized representative of the owner that such entry is forbidden. So he would have had to have been told from Mr. English's mouth or by somebody legally bound to represent Mr. English, and according to Mr. English, he's never met Mr. Arbery, so that was not the case either. Finally, last part, remains upon the land or premises of another person or within any of their property after they've been told by that person to depart. We never saw anyone in any of those videos tell him or any other person in that property to leave. And finally, for the final part, the purposes of subsection B of this code is basically what this means is if there are proper signage posted to say no trespassing. And we know that that was not the case on the house because no one ever commented on a sign or signage being there. And the reason I have a lot of these highlighted is because everyone was talking about felonies when it comes to the citizen's arrest law. And as it says here, criminal trespass is considered a misdemeanor within the state of Georgia. And I highlighted down here or made them larger because it says either the United States of America or Confederate States of America, which I found was hilarious, which shows just how long some of these laws have been on the books without being revised. Better get on that, Georgia. A lot of states need to do that. There's stuff from the 1700s still on the states, and New York and Massachusetts. So anyway, those are the laws as it pertained to this case. And now as we continue through the video, we're going to see how well this applies to this case. Let's continue on and get into part 2. Now, part 2. The prior criminal history of the Satilla subdivision and issues with the local police department, as well as prior records of Mr. Arbery. Mr. Arbery was, at one point in his life, around 2013, cited for running into a school gymnasium with a gun, as far as we know. No other priors. Do I think that that means he was necessarily a criminal himself? No. But it is a fact that has been brought out, and I wanted to bring it up here. He also has a brother and a cousin that are presently serving time in a Georgia jail. Again, I'm just going from the facts, and that it has no bearing on his character or anything. I just want everybody to know I'm trying to take the most balanced approach to that. Now, Glenn County Police Department, which handled the Satilla area, has a long history of issues. I'll just put it that way. The New York Times has reported on them several times in preceding years. Also, federal prosecutors have cited them a couple of times, have been accused of covering up allegations. They've had accusations of police misconduct, tampering with evidence, tampering with a crime scene, and interfering with a investigation of a police shooting against, it was basically officer on officer. An officer on officer shooting, as well as an officer against arrestee shooting that was supposedly covered up by the police department. And they were also brought up, some of the higher ranking officers were also brought up, and you can Google any of this and find this information, and I'll put my sources down below. Of interfering with an outside investigation. There was also accusations of officers that were cooperating with the outside investigators, the federal investigators, of being demoted and moved to the side because they were cooperating with the outside investigation. In 2019, the chief of the police accused in 2019 by the Glenn County manager as being mistrained, poorly trained, and he called the local police department a culture of cronyism because of all the apparent cover-ups that were going on in the department for a variety of reasons. These were crimes of officer against officer. These were crimes of officers against white arrestees, black arrestees, Hispanic arrestees. This was just, according to the county manager, was a culture of cronyism from day one. This was most apparent in a November 2019 grand jury in which it was brought to light that there was obscene officer misconduct when an officer was evidently having a sexual relationship with a witness. And this was, again, covered up by the local police department. State Senator of Brunswick County, his name was William Ligon. He actually, to the Georgia State Assembly, introduced a bill in early 2020 that would have abolished the county police departments and forced each city to bring forth its own police department in an effort to get rid of some of the corruption that was apparent in the county. And some of the, not only this county, but several counties, but that bill kind of died on the assembly floor. However, it was with this police department and the two local DA's office, Brunswick and Waycross, that allegedly Gregory McMichael, one of the perpetrators, was also involved with as being an investigator. When we talk about Gregory McMichael, the older of the two McMichaels, he was on record as having been an investigator for the Brunswick County DA's office. We also know from other reports that he was actually stripped of his arrest rights and other rights being a deputized officer of the court because he had failed to complete necessary training. All officers have to go through continued training. However, in late 2019, early 2020, he was stripped of his official arrest rights and official deputy powers because he refused to undergo or failed to undergo specific training, and he was aware of that. He signed an affidavit to that effect. There was also rumors that at the time of Mr. Arbery's shooting, he had been unofficially deputized by the Glenn County PD to officially police the Satilla Shores area because of a rash of reported robberies and thefts that had been reported from December 2019 to January of 2020. In fact, I'm going to insert here a clip of some text messages that were sent from a local officer to the gentleman that actually had reported some of the people on his property, Mr. English, that owned the house that Ahmad Arbery was accused of going into illegally. He actually heard from a local officer and received a text message telling him that his neighbors on that area, the McMichaels, one of them, was completely capable of helping to deal with this. So if he had any issues with the house, to call Mr. McMichael, who lived right down from the house, and Mr. Michael would help take care of it. And I'm going to insert that clip here.
Tilla Drive is Greg McMichael. Greg is retired law enforcement and also a retired investigator from the DA's office. He said, please call him day or night when you get action on your camera. And he goes on to actually give him Greg McMichael's phone number. These are newly released from the attorney of Larry English.
Also, an Atlanta reporter actually reported later also about this unofficial deputizing of the McMichaels. I'll insert that clip here as well.
A lot of ways to read this, but let's go around and get some reaction. I mean, my reaction is that somehow, some way, it's like Greg McMichael is now out of retirement, and his big case is solving the big trespassing that's taking place at the construction site caper. Ashley, I don't understand this. Why are police passing the buck?
I think you could look at it as passing the buck. I think you could look at it as, hey, Mr. English, there's a guy who lives 2 doors down who's got a lot of experience in investigating. He was one of us, and he said he'd be happy to help you out as a neighbor. I mean, I have a former police officer who lives down the street from me, and I've asked him a few favors before, and when he was retired. So I'm not so sure that's so indicting. I got to be honest. I just think neighbors look out for neighbors. And since there'd been so much activity at Mr. English's property under construction, by the way, the neighborhood had been sharing a lot of these videos through the next door app. If you know what the Nextdoor app is, it's a neighborhood group sort of chat. All over the country, neighborhoods get together. You have to be invited and allowed in, and you can sort of look out for each other. And I get alerts all the time saying cars being broken into 4 doors down or 3 neighborhoods over, keep on the alert. And people share their videos and say, has anybody seen this guy? He broke into my car last night. So I don't see that as so weird. I see that as a police officer saying, the neighbor 2 doors down from you is a former cop. He said he'd be happy to give you a hand, and he asked me to pass on his info to you. Does that make sense?
And why am I bringing all this up? Because it bears on the case. It bears highly on the case. We just went over the laws and what, did Ahmad Arbery break any of these laws? Were any of those laws pertinent to the McMichaels actually going after Mr. Arbery? All this bears. So why I'm bringing this up is that even though the McMichaels, I can't really do this without inserting an opinion, even though the McMichaels definitely should not have been chasing Mr. Arbery with a gun, I'm also going to say that maybe they thought they had more power than they did. Not based on any of the laws we just talked about, but on the fact that they had been unofficially deputized, or at least Gregory McMichael had, by the local PD based on these texts. Now, that rash of crime that we were talking about between December 2019 and January 20th, residents of Satilla Shore reported thefts, trespassing, and activities and other suspicious activities to police during that time. There were 3 break-ins or thefts. There was also rifles reported by Mr. McMichael and others stolen from vehicles, as well as on January 1st, 2020, Travis McMichael, the younger McMichael, filed a report of a stolen firearm from his unlocked truck. Now, you've heard the rumor that there were absolutely 0 records of any crimes being reported on Satilla Shores right up into the time of Mr. Arbery's shooting. That was untrue. There's at least 4 to 5 reports of thefts and or trespassing reported in the area, which I believe might have been the reason that the police actually quasi-deputized this guy, if this is an actual text from that was an actual text from a police officer. And now that's going to bring us up to part 3, the actual events of that day. So let's get into that. Who were the people involved in the incident? First, we have Ahmad Marquez Arbery. He was 25 years old. He graduated from Brunswick High School in 2012. In fact, he lived a grand total of 2 miles from Satilla Shores. He was not, as it has been reported previously, 10 miles away to go jogging. He lived 2 miles away from it, so well within a jogger's distance. He attended South Georgia Technical College during fall of 2012 and spring of 2013 to pursue a career as an electrician. He was not currently in school, but according to his family, especially his sister, said that he still had aspirations of being an electrician. According to his previous boss at a car wash, he was a model employee that often gave his co-workers that couldn't afford money to eat. Either gave them food or money to eat. He was an avid player of basketball and football and an avid runner. Everyone that knew him said he loved to run. He jogged and ran daily. So I truly believe that's probably why he was in the Satilla Shores neighborhood. We have Gregory McMichael, age 64, had previously worked for Glenn County PD until he was removed of his arrest rights because he refused to undergo training toward the ends of his career. He was an officer from 1982 to 1989 and then became a Brunswick Judicial Circuit District Attorney Investigator's Office from 1995 until his retirement in May of 2019 because he did not undergo the training that he was required to do. His son, Travis McMichael, 34, that evidently they lived in the same house. That's what I'm gathering. Also, William Roddie Bryan. He's age 50. He was the McMichaels' neighbors and he was the one that recorded the infamous video we've all. All right, let's talk about Larry English's house that was under construction. It was at 220 Satilla Shore Drive, right down from the McMichaels. As we had talked about earlier, he had been told by a local police department, allegedly told by a local officer via text that I showed earlier, that he could contact his neighbors, the McMichaels, that would help him watch the property and could help him keep an eye on it. Mr. English had said in the past that lots of people were in and out of that house. In fact, I have 3 videos here to show you. One from December of 2019 that shows a young African-American man that could very well be Ahmad Arbery. Also the infamous one from February 11th, also showing somebody that looked very much like Ahmad Arbery. And there's also an additional video of a young Caucasian couple walking through the constructed house. I'm going to play those all 3 for you now.
Arbery case. This video, taken on December 17th, appears to show a man leaving the house under construction. 911 call.
Anyways, the officer eventually texts Larry English this text message. There's the video now, the couple that enters the home that Larry English called police about.
All right, as you can see, Ahmad Arbery was not the only ones going into that constructed house. In fact, Larry English had said earlier that he had seen lots of people and had complained about trespassing on his property before. So lots of people were going into this constructed house. I have to admit, whenever there was new construction in my neighborhood and I was out and about, if no one was around, I was inclined to go in and look because I want to see if they got a better house than me. I mean, that's just how it is, how lots of people are. Larry English has said on several occasions that nothing was ever taken from the property. Now, why was Mr. Arbery in there? Maybe he is still interested in being an electrician. He wanted to see how it was wired. Maybe he was just curious as to what kind of house they were building. Maybe he was getting water. I've heard that put out there, though I never saw him get any water. Maybe he was casing it for a robbery. I don't know. But I'm just saying that none of us know. Only Mr. Arbery knows, and he can't really give his side of the story. So, based on the laws that we just talked about, he was not guilty of criminal trespass. Criminal trespass has 3 distinct things that have to be met. 1, you enter a property unlawfully with the intent of stealing or doing damage, and you do that stealing or that damage. He did not do that, as evidenced by the 2 videos we just saw. Number 2, you've been told specifically out of the mouth of the owner not to go into that building. That was not done. Mr. English never met Mr. Arbery. He said that many times, so he never told him that. And finally, you avoid all signage that may say no trespassing. According to everyone, the house did not have such signage on it. So according to that, Mr. Arbery was not guilty of criminal trespass. Now keep that in mind. I'm just going by the law we just talked about. Not guilty of criminal trespass. In fact, he was not doing anything differently than other people milling about that property had done. Now, let's skip ahead to the fateful day, February 23rd, 2000. There were 2 calls made to 911 on February 23rd, 2020. The first came in just around 1 o'clock p.m., in which a male caller told the 911 dispatcher that there was a man breaking into a house under construction next to him. The callers have been identified later as Travis McMichael. And the 911 dispatcher actually asked him, what's he doing right now? Is he breaking into it right now? And the guy said, and the male caller said, no, it's all open. Well, what's he doing? The 911 dispatcher asked. He says he's just running down the street. And the dispatcher asked around 1:08 p.m., I need to know what he's doing wrong. Was he just on the premise that he wasn't supposed to be? And then the caller kind of garbled out. But we were able to make out a couple of sentences in which he said, he's been caught on a camera a bunch at night. It's kind of an ongoing thing. The caller then identified the man as a black guy with a white t-shirt. We know that that was what Ahmad was wearing. A second call comes in around 1:14 p.m. with the same male caller saying, "I'm out here at Satilla Shores. There's a black male running down the street." The 911 dispatcher said, "Where?" "At Satilla Shores." The caller said, "I don't know what street we're on." The caller was then heard shouting, "Stop! Watch that! Stop! Damn it! Stop!" The dispatcher tried to speak to the caller but did not receive a reply for several minutes, and the caller hung up. And I'm going to play the recording of that call, the infamous 911 call from Travis McMichael to the 911 dispatcher right here.
Hey, I live out at Steel Shores. There's
Okay.
break-ins out here. There's a guy in the house right now. It's a house under construction.
Okay, do you have your address or the other house's address?
Right at 219 or 220 Satilla Drive.
And you said someone's breaking into it right now?
No, it's all open. It's under construction. And he's running right now. There he goes right now.
Okay, what is he doing?
He's running down the street.
Okay.
Back into the
Okay, that's fine. I'll get them out there. I just need to know what he was doing wrong. Was he just on the premises and not supposed to be?
Stuff on it. And he's been caught on the camera a bunch before at night. It's kind of an ongoing thing out here. The man that's building the house has got heart issues. I think he's not going to finish it. So.
Okay, that's fine. And you said it was a male in a black t-shirt?
A white t-shirt. Black guy, white t-shirt. And he's done back running. He's done running back into the neighborhood.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
I'm out here at Satilla Shores. There's a black male running down the street.
Where at Satilla Shores?
I don't know what street we're on. Stop right there! Damn it! Stop! Travis!
Sir, hello, sir. Sir, where you at? Hello? Hello?
It's here that the infamous video that everyone has seen that was shot by Mr. Bryan. Supposedly there was over 4 minutes of video. We only get to see the last minute to a minute and a half. I'd be interested to see what that 4 minutes of video actually contains. I'm going to play that video for you now. It's got a lot of very graphic scenes in it, so if that's not your jam, then please, I invite you not to watch. But basically it shows Ahmad Arbery jogging or running down the street on Satilla Shore. It shows Mr. Bryan's car following him. We see the white pickup truck driven by Travis McMichael with his father in the back, Greg, and we see Mr. Arbery running towards that truck and then kind of moving to the side to go around, and then we see Travis McMichael get out of the truck carrying a shotgun and confront Ahmad Arbery, who then grabs the shotgun and a fight ensues. We see Ahmad Arbery hitting Travis McMichael in the head. Then we hear one shot, then we hear a shout and another shot. We see Ahmad Arbery run toward the front and collapse where he died. Now, according to other witnesses, the pickup truck had been kind of following Ahmad Arbery for a while. According to the McMichaels, whose was the only statement that was actually taken by the police on the scene that day, they simply said they were trying to talk to him. They wanted him to stop and talk to him because they suspected he was the one doing the break-ins in the neighborhood. And he became belligerent and grabbed the gun, therefore causing the gun to go off. That's exactly what the police officers were told. But I'm going to play that video for you now.
And break down what happens. This is Arbery. He has been running from the vehicles for almost 4 minutes. Travis is standing by the driver's side of the truck, armed with a shotgun. Gregory is in the bed of the truck on the 911 call. Arbery doesn't know where to run. He veers right, then left, and then darts around the right side of the vehicle. Arbery comes around the front of the truck. We see his white t-shirt through the windshield. And here is Travis, now leaning toward him. This is the instant the first shot is fired. Arbery is hit in the chest, his right lung, ribs and sternum are injured. The two men wrestle over the gun. Gregory shouts.
Travis!
Arbery punches Travis. In the back of the truck, Gregory drops the cell phone. A second blast goes off, out of frame, but we see the shotgun smoke here. Arbery is heavily bleeding. He throws another punch. Travis fires a final shot, which hits Arbery in his left upper chest. Travis walks away, holding his gun. Gregory gets off the truck, clutching his .357 Magnum. According to the police report, Gregory rolled Arbery over to see if he had a weapon. He did not.
As you can see, once Gregory McMichael got out of the pickup truck, he immediately went up to Ahmad Arbery. We didn't get to see him, but he actually flipped Ahmad Arbery over to see if he was armed. He was not. The McMichaels had two weapons, a .357 Magnum revolver and a shotgun. Senior Mr. McMichael had the revolver, where his son had the shotgun. According, as I said, to the statement that the police took, their statements were the only ones took that day, that they were pursuing him because they suspected he was the one responsible for this that had been reported since December of 2019. And they decided that they wanted to enact their rights under the Georgia Citizens Arrest Act. Now let's talk about that law, reference to what we just talked about. For the citizens arrest law to actually take place, a person has to be caught either running from having just committed a crime, or caught in the act of committing a crime. That's the only time that law takes effect. Now, at the time, Ahmad Arbery, because we've already established he wasn't guilty of criminal trespass under Georgia statutes, he was not running from committing a crime. So I don't think citizens arrest really applies here. How about stand your ground? Stand your ground only applies if it's inside a dwelling and the person feels threatened. That did not happen here. Stand your ground is also nullified if the one trying to enact it is the one with the weapon and being the aggressor, as we saw. Now, yes, Mr. Arbery did hit him in the head. He did fight back, but I might do that if two people came at me with a gun, too. I'm just saying. But to the letter of the law, Mr. Arbery was not the aggressor according to the stand your ground law. The moment they stepped outside a dwelling and approached him with a gun, neither stand your ground did not apply. Citizens arrest didn't apply because Mr. Arbery was not running from having committed a crime or caught in the act of a crime. And the citizens arrest law never really applies to deadly force either. All that we can contend here is the McMichaels, at least Gregory, was under some sort of official deputization, which we discussed earlier with the text, and decided he was going to kind of be the enforcer here and hold Mr. Arbery until police came, and it kind of ensued and went deadly. Now, once Glenn County came, took the statements, it is said that no arrests were made that day by Glenn County PD. And now we're going to get into part 4, the investigation. According to Glenn County PD, they immediately said during the investigation that Brunswick District Attorney's Office and Brunswick District Attorney Jackie Johnson advised them on February 23rd to make no arrests in this case. She has since removed herself from the case since McMichael worked for her while he was with the Brunswick District Attorney's Office. She also denies that she ever told Glenn County PD not to make an arrest. February 24th, Waycross Judicial Circuit District Attorney George Barnhill actually is said to have told them to make no arrests at this time. It wasn't until Barnhill was officially appointed as the lead investigator on the case on February 27th, that he also was reported who is telling them not to make an arrest. After the investigation went on for a while, April 2nd, 2020, Barnhill was again quoted as having advised the Glenn County PD not to make an arrest. He also announced his intention that day to also remove himself from the case because of a connection to Gregory McMichael's, and because he had also worked with Gregory McMichael in the past. April 7th, Atlantic Judicial Circuit District Attorney Tom Durden was appointed to the case was asked to take the case. On April 13th, he officially became the investigator. He has since asked the Georgia Bureau of Investigation and the Federal Bureau of Investigation to take up investigating this crime and to also stand in to prevent acts of crime and threats against the officers that responded to the crime on February 23rd that made no arrests, because as we all know, this has become a highly politically, racially charged case. We still have no arrests, though, even though we're on our third investigator and third prosecutor. Gregory McMichael is said to have been the one to request his attorney release the video taken by neighbor Bryan on February 23rd, and on May 5th, a local radio station, 𝐜𝐚𝐬𝐷, did release it on their website, and of course, as we all know, the video we just watched went viral. It was at that point that a huge call for these people to be arrested came in. Within hours of that video being released, Durden said he would send the case to a grand jury who would decide whether or not arrests should be made, and he also finally accepted an offer from Governor Bryan Kemp to have the GBI take over the investigation as well. On May 7th, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation officially arrested the McMichaels and charged them both with aggravated assault and felony murder. Felony murder is murder that was not necessary. It's not like first or second degree murder that have the nature of intent, that they sought out to kill someone. This is basically a type of murder that exists when you are in the process of committing another crime, such as unlawfully following Mr. Arbery, and then a killing takes place. So they officially charged them with felony murder and aggravated assault. On May 21st, we know Bryan, who took the famous video, was also arrested and charged with felony murder and attempted false imprisonment, because evidently the McMichaels have since testified, as well as other neighbors have testified, that Bryan was not just following as a witness, he was also part of them trying to detain Mr. Arbery. He had tried to box him in with his car several times, according to other neighbors. So he was considered part of the same crime that led to the felony murder of Mr. Arbery, and he was arrested at that time. And I gotta tell you, I'm going to play a video here of him and his lawyer talking to CNN, and his lawyer is certainly a piece of work. Let's check this out.
His attorney, 𝐜𝐤𝐿. Gentlemen, thank you for taking the opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
Good
evening.
All right. Mr. Bryan, you are known as Roddie to friends, correct?
That's right.
And in the police report, the McMichaels referred to a Roddie. I'm assuming that was you, yes?
Okay. Hey, hold on, Chris. You've been a prosecutor, and you can imagine that this prosecutor that's been in this case 24 hours, she's going to start throwing stuff around her living room if you start doing her job for her. Okay, because as good as you are, she'd probably rather do it herself. You know what we could talk about without causing problems for anybody, and I know you're trying, but this man cannot be answering substantive questions about the case. And if you feel that we've misled you in some way, I'm sorry.
No. It's not about misleading. It's about just being clear for the audience. Okay. I always believe that the best opportunity the media can give you is the opportunity to tell the truth in a way that helps you. That's all I'm saying. I don't know why you would dispute the notion of the man's presence at the situation, but that's fine. Let me move on. And you, counselor, should weigh in whenever you feel like it. So, Mr. Bryan, how did you come to be in the car videotaping that day?
Okay, we're not going there.
You don't want to talk about that either. All right, so let's do this. You are afraid of the facts of this case, Counselor White.
Sir, I'm not afraid of anything. And I'm certainly not, with all due respect,
Sure.
I'm not afraid of you, but I respect you.
And I respect you.
You are a brilliant, very capable lawyer, and you are you are a very good prosecutor. And my client is a mechanic with a high school education, and if you've ever been to the high schools around here, that's not necessarily saying much. Okay? And I don't mind if the Board of Education doesn't like it. You know, I'm not their friend either. Okay? But you can't be asking him questions about the substance of the evidence, because like I said, there's a young lady that's been in this case less than 24 hours who's going to be throwing stuff around her living room, and I don't want.
In the midst of all this, Georgia has officially asked the FBI to help take over the investigation, and they are currently working with the GBI, and more details will follow as we get closer to the trial of these guys. And that's where we stand at this point. What do I think? I really don't want to enter an opinion on this case. Yeah, it's difficult. But I think I've stated, based on the law as it stands, Mr. Arbery committed no crimes. Based on the law that the McMichaels used, they were not under the protection of those laws because of the circumstances. But I think we're going to find that those text messages that I found were probably accurate, and that Mr. McMichael felt it was his unofficial duty to deal with it and keep robberies down in his neighborhood. And I think we're going to find that even though the Arbery's are guilty of killing, even though the McMichaels are guilty of killing they are the ones that killed Mr. Arbery, I think we're going to find, based on the information about how reckless this local PD can be, I think we're going to find they have a lot more to do with the crime than is being led on. And I'm glad it's in the hands of the FBI, who will hopefully do a full and accurate investigation. Mr. Arbery is the true victim here, but I also think in a way the McMichaels were set up by the local PD, if all that turns out. And I think the PD, why they weren't arrested is because they knew they had given him the power to do this, and they were going to kind of sweep it under the rug, and it didn't work out for them because the public got involved. So there you go. I guess I did give my opinion. I didn't really mean to, but after reading the law and looking at what happened, it's kind of hard not to form an opinion. But in any case, my heart goes out to Ahmad Arbery's family. It goes out to the innocent members of the McMichael family. It goes out to anyone involved in this case, because no one wins here. No one wins. And I hope that better days are ahead. That's all I can say. And I want justice to be dealt in this case, just like I want it to be dealt in all the other cases. I mentioned it first. This was a hard one. This was hard to do, especially given the current climate going on. But as I said, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed my very simplistic view of it. I love you all, and thank you for being here. I hope you'll subscribe if you're not a subscriber, and I hope I'll be back soon with some more lighthearted cases, if that's even a thing in true crime. But anyway, I appreciate it. I love you. I know I'm in my old setting today. My grandmother's house wasn't available. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed it. Like, comment, share, subscribe. And until next time, 𝐲𝐞𝐿, out.